My name is J.P. Singh, and today is July 8th, 2014. I was 40 years old at that time. I was living in the Berkeley area. I was an engineer. I was actually on a project up in Anchorage, Alaska, and whatever happened in Golden Temple was when I was en route from Anchorage to San Francisco. And the first time I heard about the Golden Temple attack was after I landed in San Francisco. The Golden Temple attack building was coming up. I knew about that because I went to India in January of 1984, and I actually landed in India on the 26th of January, the Republic Day. And I had a meeting the next day with some of the folks who used to work with Singh. And at the breakfast meeting, I was told that so long we have a few people working with in United States, and so long as those people are with us, that nothing is going to happen from the 6 living in America, no reactions per se. So at that time I got a feeling that the government has moved in to the United States, and they're already working with some of the prominent Sikhs in the US at that time. And I would return back from India on February 10th, if I remember correctly. And that day, what they call Chakka Jam hai ji aaj, and so there was no movement on the roads, and but I was given a special privilege to get to the airport to get my flight, because these guys knew who had sort of stopped the traffic on the different roads.
Okay.
But 1984 was a real shocker, and after that thing happened, the Indian government had already started to work and throw a lot of propaganda stuff at a lot of us who were either active in the gurdwaras or working with the other activities Sikh related, and to brainwash us that nothing has happened in Golden Temple and there's no damage to the Gurdwara Sahib, and basically all the propaganda stuff which is coming out is not true. And there was a lot of resentment in the Sikh community, and at that time there were a lot of demonstrations at the consulate office about the Golden Temple attack. I think all this is what happened in 1984 had its roots way back in 1978, when the 13 Sikhs were killed by the Nirankaris in Amritsar. And at that time, Dr. Sukhminder Singh and myself, we were at University of California, Berkeley, and we were getting our PhDs at that time. And I was also working on 2 nuclear power plants in Iran at that time, and I had just come back from Iran. And the Morarji Desai actually came to Berkeley to give a talk at the Zellerbach Hall. And so we knew that he was coming for his talk here, and we wanted to do a demonstration on the campus. And so we went to the authorities at Sproul Hall and to get the permit to do the demonstration. And we were told that you have to have some kind of association to demonstrate. You can't demonstrate as individuals. And that's the first time in the history of UC Berkeley that a Sikh Students Association was formed. So it was 1978. Dr. Sukhminder Singh, myself, and Santokh Singh Karo, 3 of us, we formed the Sikh Student Association at Berkeley. And when we did that, we got the permit to do the demonstration. And the only problem was that only the students on the campus could demonstrate. And we were very few of us, and the number was very small. So we went back to the authorities at Sproul Hall and told them that we're going to bring in some people from Yuba City and Fresno to make the crowd a little more big. They said, we don't usually allow that, but we will do a special favor to you that you can bring the crowd from Yuba City and Fresno to be on the campus. And so they allowed us to do that. And then they were so kind. They said at that time the Iranian students were doing demonstrations here too against for the Shah of Iran. And they said, we will give you the permit for the mic also. And you can use the loudspeakers and the microphone or whatever you want. So we will give you that permit as well. But we at that time also found out that they had the riot police in the basement of the Zellerbach Hall, because they wanted to make sure that there was no violence on the campus from that. And after the presentation that day, I did not, but some of our community members went to see Morarji Desai to talk about the 1978, what happened there. And he was not very kind, and when he was talking, he says, I went to Darbar Sahib and they gave me a Kara Prasad. I took it. I didn't take it, and I just told them, rub it on my head. That's the kind of language he used when the community went to see him. And the next day he was even more upset, because when he was shown on the television, and they only showed about his urine therapy and didn't show much of Morarji Desai, and most of the coverage was on the demonstration which was held on the Berkeley campus. And if you're interested, the Daily Californian had the news and also the photographs from 1978. That's in archives, and I also have a copy as well. My being active goes back to 1965. I actually came to the United States in 1965, and in 1965, about summertime, 5 of us got together. Dr. Narendra Kapani, Dr. Janmeja Singh, Dr. Janmeja Singh, and Gurpreet Singh Jalewalia, and myself. 5 of us got together, and we thought that we need to have a Gurdwara in the San Francisco Bay Area. There was only one Gurdwara at that time in Stockton. So I think a few months later on, we incorporated the Sikh Center of San Francisco Bay Area. And by the time, I think in 1975, we had the organization, and in 1970, I was the secretary of the organization of the Sikh Center of San Francisco Bay Area. And that time we were looking for the Gurdwara sites in San Francisco Bay Area, but we eventually bought the piece of property in El Sobrante for $26,000 at that time. And the Gurdwara was built there in 1979. At that time, Sikh Council of North America was formed also. And the Sikh Council of North America's birth happened at the Gurdwara in New York, Sikh Cultural Society in Richmond Hill. And their first meeting, the Sikh Council of North America conference, was held at El Sobrante, where we invited Jimmy Carter to come to the conference. He was the president at that time, and he did not come. He sent his mother, Lillian Carter, and Lillian Carter was here for the conference at that time. So, and in 1981, I was the vice president of Sikh Council of North America for the Western region, and I was also the active as vice president and secretary for the Sikh Center of San Francisco Bay Area as well, and I was on the committee. So I was active pretty much all along with the activities of the Sikh community. And where I knew that something is really happening was in the 1982, when the Sikh Council of North America conference was held in Chicago. At that time, the Indian government was trying to interfere a lot with the Sikh matters in the United States. The Sikh Council of North America was pretty much the Congress up front in this country. And at that time, Akali Dal started as well, which was called the North America Akali Dal, called NAAD, N-A-A-D. And Dr. Sukhminder Singh was the president of North America Akali Dal. And before, he was the president of the Sikh Council of North America. And what happened is, at the conference which was held in Chicago in about 1982, the people from California, took a big contingent from here, and at the conference there, the Sikh Council of North America split into two. So one remained as the Sikh Council of North America, and which was pretty much the eastern United States, and including the Midwest, and all the California turned into North America Akali Dal. So the split took across the United States, the west part being the Akali Dal and the eastern part being the Congress. And so there, I think a lot of activities went on, and with then the Akali Dal people tried to send, when the morcha was going on by Sant Jarnail Singh Pindrawale, they tried to send some people for demonstration back in India also. And Sir Harbhajan Singh Grewal, who happens to be a very good friend of mine, and he went twice to India, and he was returned back from the airport 2 times from the airport, New Delhi. So the activity was taking place, so everybody knew that something is coming, but nobody knew that this was going to be of this magnitude, that the Golden Temple is going to be attacked, and there'll be so much damage to the Golden Temple. Mm-hmm. The propaganda material which was sent to us after the June 1984, as I mentioned, I think they used to overnight all this stuff as soon as they got it. And mostly it was videotapes, and these were very selective recordings from the Golden Temple, which showed only the things, that there was no damage to the buildings or nothing else, so they showed all that. And then they had a lot of Sikh people, who they thought that if they could get on the camera and just make some statements, that they will be convincing enough to convince the community overseas that nothing has gone wrong. And I can remember one guy, Brigadier Sparrow, I think you may know him, Rajinder Singh Sparrow. I know him very well because he used to live a few blocks away from us in Patiala. He was the brigadier out there, and his kids used to play with me, so I knew him. And he just was outright lies what he was telling on the television and on the videotapes, and you could make out that somebody has just told him to say what he had to say. And then there were a lot of when Gyani Jail Singh went there, there were a lot of footage from that, and showing that nothing has happened there. After the, I think it's sort of about the, in 1984, we also had the Olympics in Los Angeles. I think it was about June. And a contingent came down, the athletes and the people who were with the athletes. I think you know it very well. There are more people accompanying athletes than their athletes themselves. That's how the Indian athletics works. And one of the persons who was the PR officer for Gyani Jail Singh, he came down, and he was known to me, and he actually came to see me in the Bay Area, and he was trying to convince me that nothing had happened, and there was nobody who would convince me that what has gone on there. In November 1984, I was in the Bay Area, and I was with the Gurdwara Sahib at that time, and there was a Bhai Jeevan Singh who belonged to the Akhand Kirtani Jatha, and when he knew that there was something going on in New Delhi, that the Indira Gandhi has been shot, and not having any phone calls or nothing like that, and he said, I can see fires and things like that, and all of us need to go into the Gurdwara Sahib and do Simran. And all that night, we were doing Simran in the Gurdwara Sahib. And he saw that something is going on. So I think that was 1984. And then after 1984, all the recordings were done in New Delhi. I think Living-Jeevit told you about that Nilay Panji had all those video recorded, all what was going on in New Delhi. And those videotapes came out of the country to my cousin, Jasjeet Radewala, in Los Angeles, and he gave me a few copies of those tapes, and those I circulated in the Gurdwara Sahib, and one of those tapes made it back to India, and I even understand it made it back to the Parliament. Who is this guy who is doing all this stuff? And then I couldn't travel back to India anymore. There was nothing that I had put in there. These were just the simple recordings going on. Well, those tapes are still very fresh in my memory, and I think it's very hard to realize that how those people must have been tortured and killed, to have the burning tires around your necks and to be killed that way. It must be very torturous. And so that's what was going on. And then the World Sikh Organization was formed here. The government had already sent General Puller and Manjeet Singh and some of the other guys before even all this happened, and they came here and they said, oh yeah, Sant Jarnail Singh Pindrawale has sent us here to make sure that everything goes on right and things like that, but they were planted by the Indian government. And I knew who they were because I had connections in India. They told me that these are not Sant Jarnail Singh Pindrawale's persons, and they are basically plants of the Indian government. And so when I was the secretary, they pretty much refrained from coming to the Gurdwara because they knew that I wouldn't probably let them speak in the Gurdwara Sahib. But they were just trying to do as much damage as they could and try to collect the money from the Gurdwaras and things like that. That money never went back, and General Puller built a house on the river or someplace in Washington, D.C. So that's how the money was spent. And there was a lot of stuff going on because before all the 1984 happened, the Indian government had sent a lot of people to America already that who were creating chaos in the Gurdwaras before even 1984 happened. And so you could see that. And when after 1984, these guys got even more active. And to the point that they said, we are, that we are being killed, we were persecuted and things like that. That's why we are here. But they were actually, people working for the Indian government. And then they would go to the Gurdwaras and say, we need to collect the money and collect the funds for the families they have been killed, and lay out the bed sheets on the stage and tell people to put the money and things like that. And I know some ladies even taking out their gold and gold rings and earrings and things like that, and putting there and just put it all together and just be no accounting and whatever, and just take it away. So we don't know where all that money went. And then there was a meeting in New York at the Madison Garden, which was the beginning of the World Sikh Organization, and I was there at the meeting, but just attending the meeting. I was not active anywhere to be part of that organization, just to see what is going on. And there was a lot of backstage fight going on, that who is going to be the president of the World Sikh Organization, because both these guys were sort of plants of the Indian government and to create chaos and things like that. I don't want to name anybody at this time. And these guys were there, and to the point of fist fight also, that who is going to be named as the president of the World Sikh Organization. That's the state we were in at the time when all this was going back in India. At the Madison Square Garden meeting, which was held, there was a lot of lectures, we'll do this, we will do that. I think that was going on. But more which was going on is who is going to control it. And so I think that's where the struggle was, that which end of the government-backed party is going to be in power to take care of that position. And that was a real sad state of the affairs, because there were families here whose families had been hurt, have been killed and things like that. Their feelings were totally different than whose families had not been killed, but who were out here in this country, who were serving the government's mission. So they were two different animals we were facing here at the same time. One thing which changed here was I got my education in copper engineering, and a lot of my friends have been Hindus. I have in my life very few Sikh friends. I think I was surrounded by a lot of Hindu friends, and so when we came here, I think we had quite a big circle of the Hindu friends as well. And whatever happened in 1984 had to start to throw some wedge in the relationships, as to people used to say, well, Hindus are doing all this, and I used to say, well, that's not true, that these are some political moves and have nothing to do with the Hindus. And you can't start to challenge your friends, because they are not even part of it. So I think it hurt a lot of relationships between the Hindus and Sikhs in this community, and some of them probably still exist till today. It has been 30 years. Yeah. And some have been reconciled, and some still have not been reconciled. My children were pretty old at that time. My younger son was 14 years old, and my older son was 16 years old. And they knew all that very well, what happened. And they have very good memories of what happened. And they were very active in the demonstrations. And so they knew exactly what goes on, and it still hurts them till today. My older brother-in-law was picked up from his village, and he was told that he harbors the terrorists, so he was picked up. And my other brother-in-law found out that he's been picked up and been taken to probably be shot and killed. But he had the connections, and he made the moves very quickly and got him released. Otherwise, if he were late by a few hours, he would probably be gone. So that has happened to one of our family members as well. I think one thing which I want to say is what the younger generation is doing right now. I think it's just truly outstanding, as they are the ones who are keeping the 1984 alive. It's the younger generation making the movies and doing a lot of work on the 1984 and things like that. We cannot let the 1984 die. And it's not the 1984. I think we have let the 1978 die. I think actually 1978 should live as well, because that's where the whole thing started. At the 1984, actually, the foundation stone for 1984 was laid in 1978 with those killings, and it just flared up to this point because all that 78 was a politically motivated as well, and it took a different turn, and that's where it is. My cousin Jasjeet Radewala, he dealt with Lamborghinis in Southern California, and he had some very high-end connections with the Jewish community and things like that. And in the industry, the guys who have made the movies about Holocaust and things like that. And it was his ambition one day to make a movie about the Sikh Holocaust, but his life was cut short that he died. But that was his ambition to do that, and I feel so good when I see his his dream being carried on by the youth in the United States and other parts of the world.